This bike right here is the brand new 2025 E-Ride Pro SR, and it is highly anticipated. A lot of people are claiming that it's the fastest electric dirt bike that you can get right now. I'm not exactly sure if that's true, but I know it's going to be one of the fastest lightweight electric dirt bikes that you can get. So we've got an awesome 50-degree day in the middle of winter here in Colorado. We're gonna take advantage of it, get out on the SR, and give you our first impression. Some of the things that I noticed right off the bat. The SR has extra large foot pegs with nice aggressive pins. They're almost obnoxiously wide. It's running a much larger 58 tooth sprocket with a 428 chain. The fork is a Fastace ALX 32RC with a 60-pound spring, compression and rebound adjustment, and super high quality SKF fork seals. The shock is also a Fastace with compression and rebound adjustment. It's got legit knobby tires with a larger than usual 190/18 rear and 80/119 front. The wheels are straight laced to stronger hubs, although I noticed the front hub is pretty narrow, similar to the Altus Sigma pre-production bike that we tested. The brakes have adjustable levers, and they're stronger 4-piston calipers using dot brake fluid, and the rotors are 220mm with a 3mm thickness. The frame, subframe, and swing arm are all updated and stiffer. It's got a new plastic skid plate. The battery is 72 volt, 50 amp hour, totaling 3.6 kilowatt hours. The power of this bike is 25 kilowatts peak and 10 kilowatts nominal, and the controller is fully tunable with a Bluetooth app. It's got Eco, Sport, and Race mode, reverse, regen modes, and a regen thumb lever. And on our scale, the bike weighed in at roughly 181 pounds. All right, first ride on the E-Ride Pro SR. You just gotta turn your key on here. If you have an E-Ride Pro already, you'll recognize this screen here. The difference is you've got a P now. See the P there and the P here for park. Click the park and then it'll put you into ready mode. And you've got 3 power modes. You've got Eco, Sport, and Race. You've also got regen levels right here. If you look at that triangle, you have got 1, 2, and 3 levels of regen and a regen lever right here. So I'm gonna shut that off for the moment. You can see that we've got 0 miles on this bike. So I'm gonna start off by doing a top speed run. That's why I've got my phone up here, and we're gonna put the speedometer on, see how fast this bike can go. All right, race mode, let's do a top speed run. All right, here's our window. Let's go for it. Go, going back the other direction. We're also gonna bed the brakes in right now. Yeah, 64. Yeah, that's it, 64 miles an hour. So I made a slight error here. I thought I saved the top speed in the app to 100% top speed, but it was actually stuck down at 90% top speed, which means E-Ride Pro's 70 mile per hour top speed claim is accurate. This bike will do more than 65 miles per hour when you slide that parameter up to 100%. All right. With that out of the way, let's go ride this thing. We're on a track right now that I ride a lot, but I've actually not ridden a small bike here. This is kind of fun and definitely different. Man, this bike's got a lot of power. This is about as good as this track ever gets, because you can see the little bits of snow in here, which means that it's had some moisture. And that is perfect for traction.
Definitely not the most interesting place to ride visually, but you gotta take what you can get. It is January in Colorado, and it's 50 degrees out right now. So we're lucky to be riding at all. So I'm gonna say this right out of the gate here, because everybody's gonna want to know battery range. Yes, I'm gonna record battery range right now, but this is probably the worst range that you're ever gonna get, because this is soft, loose sand. So I'm gonna call this like a torture test on the battery range and the battery for this bike. I will let you know what the range is, but please know that this is probably the worst range that anyone is going to get on this bike because of the conditions. All right, I'm still in race mode. This is ridiculous. It is faster than any of these bikes need to be. Let's be honest. There's like a power war going on right now with these lightweight bikes, and it's getting out of hand. It's just like kind of unnecessary. It's sweet. I'm glad that it's there. Don't get me wrong. But like, maybe if you're riding on the street, yeah. But I'm probably gonna knock it down to sport mode here in a second, because race mode is like a little too spicy right now for what I'm riding. I'm not saying a lot for being on a sand track where power is needed. Welcome to the world, E-Ride Pro SR. You're just going thrown straight into a torture test with no miles. That thing ripped, man. So far the bike's actually pretty quiet too. Not getting any of that like notorious battery rattling yet. Maybe a little bit. Whoa! All right, dropping it down to sport. Oh, it's eco, sport mode. All right, that's a little bit more manageable. Now, never mind, I'm going back to race. Race is too fast when I'm trying to be smooth, but when it gets deep and I want to accelerate fast, race mode is actually kind of needed in this deep sand. So chassis-wise, the suspension feels actually pretty good for what it is right now. It's taking these whoops and stuff actually pretty well. What I'm gonna point out, and I may stop here momentarily to talk about it a little bit more in depth because I just can't wrap my head around it, but why can none of these companies figure out how to make the front end longer and burlier than what it has been? This bike has been beefed up in every sense of the way, but when you look at it, it still has that weeny little front end, and that's the same for all of these bikes. They're low in the front end. Nobody's figured it out, and this bike's no different. I like the taller bars, but man, you can feel the front end is not balanced. It needs either more travel or a drop crown. It's not terrible, but it's just, I know it can be better. This is gonna be really emphasized because I'm in a sand track right now, and it's just taking what's already there and making it like pretty glaring. But the front end just gets swallowed up. And when you're trying to get out of a corner, it just feels all over the place. You probably won't notice it at all if you're riding on the road, but let's be honest, this thing's got knobby tires and it is meant to be a dirt bike. So it feels amazing. And the first thing I would do is probably correct this front end. I say it on so many of these bikes, and it never changes. So once again, I'm just super picky about the front end. And these things need more heft up front. I love it though. I'm pointing out a flaw, and all these bikes have flaws, so take it with a grain of salt. This bike is sweet. The foot peg position feels further back and lower than a lot of the other bikes that I've ridden in this category, and the taller bars and direct mount stem make it feel like a pretty opened up cockpit in comparison. It's not super cramped for a bike of this category. I did remove the brake sensors, which is something I believe that everybody should do right away, especially if you're riding off-road. It's supposed to be a safety feature, but I think it's a danger feature, personally. Woo! All right. 70%, 6 miles on the odometer here. So, is that good or bad? Yeah, honestly, for what I'm riding right now, it's pretty good. We'll get a final range number, but this thing is going to suffer out here in terms of battery range. I'm riding it in race mode, and it is deep sand. So, the worst environment, and I'm riding it hard as I can. So, all things considered, it's doing actually really well. All right, so I'm 5 laps in on the track right now on the eRide Pro SR. This thing is an absolute blast to ride. It has a ton of power. I took it out of race mode briefly and put it into sport mode. And just because this is a super deep sand track, even that, like, I wanted it back in race mode. So I might be biting my tongue a little bit saying that none of these bikes need to be this fast, because I actually preferred it in race mode in this environment, but it is a ton of power for such a small bike, and it's doing really well out here right now. The knobby tires are amazing. This thing is getting a ton of traction in this sand track right now, which there's a lot to be said for that. Most of these small bikes would absolutely suffer out here. My lap time is actually pretty darn good compared to the big bikes that I normally ride out here. So, first impressions, super positive. This bike is an absolute beast. A couple little things here and there. Every bike needs it. No manufacturer has figured this out in this genre yet. I don't care if you're looking at the Altus, Sur-Ron, Talaria, eRide Pro, 79 bike. They have all got low front ends, and I don't understand why it's not being addressed. The rest of the bike is a beast. It's getting bigger, heavier, knobbier tires, more weight, and the front end is still short and low. So I guess that's why we sell forks, to make these upgrades, and we'll probably be doing that because I think this thing's going to be an absolute animal when this front end is a little bit beefier. So one thing I like about eRide Pro, and one thing I've noticed, is they really do pay attention to what people are saying and seem to make the adjustments. And this bike is a real good representation of addressing a lot of those issues. And maybe I'm the rare person that really wants these updates in the front end of these bikes, but I really do. I think it's a step in the right direction with like more height in the front in terms of the bars and bar clamp. But yeah, it just feels like the front end of me just feels tall in the bars and stem and not in the fork, which is really where I want that height from. So I could almost go for like a lower overall bar and bar clamp setup and a taller fork or a drop crown or something, just to bring the actual front end up and not just imitate the front end coming up with a bar. But yeah, man, the tires are great. It's a huge upgrade. The brakes are great. I'm really not gonna mess with the regen just because this is like deep sand. It's just not a great test for it. We'll try that in another test. Which, speaking of other tests, what do you guys want to know about this thing? What do you guys want to see? Obviously, we've got the bike here. We've also got all the other bikes that you want to hear about. We just haven't posted a video about them yet, but we will. So what do you want to know? So quick update on the eRide Pro SR. I am seeing 50% battery percentage on the display right now, and we've gone just over 9 miles. And so I want to reiterate, I know I've said it, and I'll continue to say it, this is a torture test on this bike. We're riding it in deep sand, I'm riding it in race mode, and I'm riding it really as hard as I can. And when you put those three things together, it's the recipe for the worst battery range that you can get. So take that into consideration. So 50% on the battery right now, and we've gone just over 9 miles. That's actually really good for this track. I don't want to say I'm surprised, but I'm pretty happy with that, just given the size of this bike, the power that it's putting out, and everything else that I considered. I think the range is actually going to be really great when we put it in an environment that's not as extreme as this. I'm not thinking that you're going to get double, but you're probably going to get 30-40% better range, I would guess, than what I'm getting right now. So yeah, pretty impressed so far. All right, we are going to wrap things up now because right around 20%, I'm at 16% battery right now, and I've gone 16 miles. And this thing is way down on power, so I'm calling it pretty much dead. I'm gonna bring it back, just put it in limp mode right now and get it back, but that's the torture test. 16 miles, 16% battery. I'm also gonna do a test where I ride it on more favorable terrain because this is torture for this bike. The Stark Varg, in comparison, only got 18 miles before it was dead here, so only 2 miles shy of that. And that's a much bigger bike. Granted, it's got a lot more power, but it also has a lot more battery. So just for reference, it's kind of within that ballpark range here as the Stark Varg, which is a pretty big accomplishment, I would say. Overall, it's a super exciting, fun, fast new bike. It's got a couple flaws, mainly in the front end, but overall, so far in the first ride, I'm pretty happy with this thing. So yeah, we're gonna do some more testing. Let me know what you guys wanna know about this eRide Pro SR, and we'll try to address it in future videos. Thanks for watching.